do it. Alrighty, welcome back everybody to the Moderately Educated News Network. I'm here joined with my lovely co-host, Stefan Jones, and today we'll be talking a little bit about the Walmart DEI rollback, as well as other companies rolling back their DEI efforts, and exploring a little bit about that, why it's good, why it's bad, and just overall sharing opinions, thoughts, and comments regarding the issue. So, without further ado, I'll pass it off to Stefan, where he'll, share his screen, and we can get right into it.
So guys, I personally am okay with Walmart getting rid of DI initiatives, right? I think in trying to be so woke, there's a bit of inherent like prejudice, trying to select somebody only on race. And if you do so, then, you know, there may not necessarily be as high quality in terms of performance and so on and so forth. It's like at the end of the day, do you want a gay black pilot or do you want the best pilot? And I mean, if the gay black pilot is the best pilot, then I mean, Frank, let him fly the plane, right? He's the best pilot. But at the end of the day, bro, like the fact that he's gay and black shouldn't be the reason why the man's flying the plane. It should be because he's the best pilot. But that being said, I'm gonna share my screen, show a video. Uh, Kind of why I think there's a little bit of commonalities between racism and wokeness. And yeah, then we can jump back into the subject from there. So let me go ahead and do that now.
Good, sounds good.
When me and Brad first met, I didn't think we'd get along, but turns out we kind of agree on everything. Your racial identity is the most important thing. Everything should be looked at through the lens of race.
Jinx, you owe me a Coke. We both have a lot of opinions about people of color, even though we barely know any.
I say colored people, but as long as we're classifying them, we both think minorities are a united group who think the same and act the same.
And vote the same. You don't want to lose your black card. Sorry, I don't know. I just think we should
Roll back discrimination laws so we can hire based on race again. Jinx, now you owe me a Coke. Hey, tell him what you told me yesterday.
White actors should only do voices for white cartoon characters.
I've been saying that for years. Stick to your own.
Us white people, we have so much privilege.
I agree. It is a privilege to be white. Ask him about interracial dating.
All I said is that black men who date white women have internalized racism, and white men that date ethnic women are fetishizing them.
Guys against interracial dating now. Like, am I being pranked? Did Boomer put you up to this?
Ugh, you know that taco place is white owned?
White people should be making white foods like Kraft macaroni and cheese, no seasoning, not even salt. It's like he's a mind reader. I mean, I've been pushing for segregation forever, and my man does what?
I created an improv comedy show exclusively for ethnic people.
Guy segregates comedy on my birthday.
White people need to stop wearing dreadlocks, and they need to stop appropriating black people's music.
Shaved heads and country music, the way God intended.
You know all white people are racist.
I'm listening.
Even if you have a black wife or a black friend group, you're still really racist.
You know, we just kicked a guy out of the organization for having a black girlfriend, but if you can promise me he's still really racist, we'll consider letting him back in. Black people should only shop at black businesses.
I guess the only thing we really disagree about is I think white people are the root of all evil.
But what did I tell you, though? If we can narrow that down to a certain group of tiny-hatted white people, I think we can come to an understanding.
Technically, I don't consider Jewish people white.
Neither do I.
There you go. That shit there was some heat.
So, what are your opinions on Walmart getting rid of DI and on the video?
So as it pertains to the DEI, some of what I was reading was that their DEI efforts that they're rolling back is based off of choosing like certain race-based suppliers, maybe like smaller businesses where they're supplying from, as well as certain product lines that may be discontinued that specifically target like trans individuals. But it doesn't seem to be directly affecting the hiring process and DEI efforts in that regard. So largely, I don't necessarily have an issue with that. I think that, trans people make up a very small portion of the population. It may be like an actual business decision, like, hey, this isn't profitable marketing to such a small group that it's not practical. So that could be some justification as to why they're going to roll that back. But also the fact that in that effort to make certain groups feel included, you may exclude others. So I don't know. There's a fine line you got to walk, especially like with wokeism, DEI, and there is such a thing as overdoing it. I think like once we start to venture in the realm of like pushing white guilt and other things upon people, and start having like certain talks of reparations, I mean, I think things can do more harm than good and further divide people. As for that video, I think that represents the most extreme wokeism person, if you will. Um, I would say a majority of people don't hold those extreme views. Like I said, there's a line that you have to walk where you can't be color blind to somebody's race, but you can't make it the main driving point of how you treat them. There's a line that you have to walk there. And the
Agreed.
fact that they acknowledge that in the video and say, I think race is that important because it's a defining factor. I mean, it is. It is important. It deserves, some consideration, but for it to be a sole factor is probably inappropriate. So, like I said, wokeism and racism, I get it. They're if you really stretch it, yeah, and in maybe the most extreme cases, there are like commonalities, but the intention is different for one, and for two, yeah, I think that's only in the most extreme case of wokeism where it's like we need to segregate black people because it's to separate them from white racism. They're better off just in their own world, on their own planet,
That's what,
all
bro.
in
There's a
Africa.
lot of people trying to push for that, especially in
Yeah, no, I
California.
don't no, like I said,
Especially in
I
Cali.
think the majority of like people that recognize the importance of DEI don't think like that. At least not to that extreme. So, yeah, that's my 2 cents. How about you, bud?
For sure. Malcolm X is quoted as saying the white liberal is the most dangerous individual to the black community. Because whereas he'd say some staunch conservatives essentially are wolves that, show you their colors are very blatant, very obvious if they are racist, right? They're not going to hide anything from you, it's going to be upfront. But some of those white liberals, right? He said they try to act all buddy buddy, all friendly, but realistically, they treat black people as if they're less than them. For example, people saying that voter ID laws are racist because black people don't have IDs. That is that's blatant racism because it's a
Nope.
belief of
That's a
superiority.
fact.
No, hold on, let me tell you why. Uh, the overwhelming majority of black people over the age of 18 have some form of voter ID.
Yep.
But that being said, right, when a white liberal says, "Oh, you poor creatures, they don't even have IDs. These laws are racist. You need your ID to drink, you need your ID to drive, you need your ID for everything, but you need your ID to buy a firearm. But when it comes to voting in elections, no. That's where we draw the line." Because those poor creatures, they don't no nigga, F out of here. Like we have IDs. We're good. We don't need to be looked down upon by a race that believes they're superior that has to perpetuate some sort of fake guilt.
Ah,
Um,
I don't know how
like,
you classified white people as feeling superior there, but
brother, every white person that walks around saying, "I'm so privileged, I have they're literally saying, "I am superior." What is privilege? A superiority
no,
in
yeah, when you want to break down like technical definitions, yeah, sure, you could be interpreted as such. But when privilege is largely talked about, it's more so along the lines of unconscious bias. It's more so along the lines that you are more likely to pick John Smith on a resume versus LaQuisha Williams. Like privilege like that. Or privilege not to have as many negative stereotypes associated with you, to not have your behavior assumed as negative because of one thing or another, or like the way you talk. Like these are things usually associated with like white privilege, not necessarily that they're superior and literally like, and there's like blatant discrimination. I don't think
I'm
in
not saying that's
large
the
we don't
leading
face
forefront of it.
blatant discrimination anymore. We largely face unconscious bias nowadays.
Well, I'm not saying that's like the leading forefront of it, but I'm saying it's an underlying tone that exists. And I want you like, I mean, maybe I can share the video, but when Malcolm X speaks on the subject, you will completely understand what he's saying. And I mean, this man got killed for having these beliefs. I mean, maybe he was onto something. And MLK and even heck, Morgan Freeman, they said, "How do you end racism? Like, what's the best way to end racism, right?" Morgan Freeman said, "Stop talking about it." And Martin Luther King Jr. literally said he basically wants people to just be people and everybody acknowledge each other as people. And yes, where we are now, it's hard not to acknowledge race to some extent. Like you said, I still think you have to acknowledge it to some extent because there are like predispositions to certain communities. Like police do handle minorities a bit different, so do judges than white people or Asians or so on and so forth, right? Sentencing is different. So that's something that does need to be acknowledged, but at the same time, we need to try to break stereotypes by just acknowledging people as people and stop assuming that people are whatever quote unquote stereotype. But stereotypes exist for a reason because some group or some of the group of said community could be doing that thing, right? So um it's just overall as like a people, any group of people, right? Any race coming together and like being like, hey, we ain't doing that bull crap over here. Like white people, no more school shootings, bro. Like that's gotta die, bro. Like that's gotta die.
Like
You
a
know,
kid. Yeah.
robbing a gas station, brother, just go get your job, bro. I'm sorry. Like, hold on. You know, jumping the border. No, I'm joking. So, I got jokes today, bro. But guys, let us know in the comments how you guys feel on the subject. Whether you think, this DEI rollback is a good thing, bad thing, and let us know how you feel on like race and what lens it should be viewed through. And one thing I'd say too, I think Walmart saw what happened to Target and Anheuser-Busch, and they
Mhm.
were just like, yeah, we want no parts of that, bro. Like Target with the
Um,
trans kid stuff, yeah, that didn't go well for them. Their stock freaking plummeted. And then Anheuser-Busch trying to advertise to trans people when trans people don't care about their brand is that's diabolical work. Trying to market to 1% of the population is just not um
well, that's potential revenue and customers that you can capture with potentially minimal effort. So I understand
not
that.
if you lose your existing customer base.
Absolutely, absolutely. So while an overemphasis on it may be inappropriate, addressing a community may still be. I don't, uh, yeah, I think largely, what is that? I saw a statistic that 78% of companies plan to remain or exceed their current implementation of DEI, which I am all for, and about 22% are currently rolling theirs back. Um, so there, the thing is, when it comes to stock and DEI and the market, it's difficult to justify additional like DEI measures to shareholders because these benefits are largely they're not necessarily quantitative or obviously quantitative versus opening a new store in a certain area is obviously demonstrates or brings about like impacts to revenue or a cost to the business or things like these are easily measured, whereas the impact of DEI may not be abundantly clear without further investigation. So it's a difficult program to push to shareholders. And so when you do DEI efforts and you see the market fluctuate, it could just be, paranoia. It could be some misunderstanding. It could be personal beliefs. So I wouldn't put too much stake in stock prices, and I don't think that should be our justification for making people feel included or anything like that. So, and I'll just go on to say that the fact that 80% plan to remain or exceed their current DEI expectation, I think that's indicative of the fact that many companies, leaders in those companies still see DEI as like a necessity and important and valuable. So, yeah.
I mean, some of them will keep it, and you said some of them will increase, but it's like when you look at certain things, right? Let's take Disney. Disney's a great example, right? They tried to go on the woke binge. They tried to start forcing like all the freaking main superheroes to be women. Like nobody was going for that, bro. Comic fans are men predominantly. You have an existing market that you're trying to cater to, and you try to pivot away from it. All those quote unquote woke movies, as some news station will say, so on and so forth, they bombed. They did absolutely horrible. So bad to the fact that Deadpool made fun of it and said he had to revive Marvel as Marvel Jesus. And then number two, they're bringing back Robert Downey Jr. to like literally try to get rid of all like the woke storylines and like they're literally trying to reset everything because the whole phrase "get woke, go broke" has been proven, right? Whenever you deviate too far trying to please a certain crowd, knowing that that crowd, you can say it's trying to draw a new customer base, bruh. They're 1% of the population. You have 40% of the population that enjoys your products. Will you sacrifice the 40% for the 1%? Does that sound like a smart business decision? No, it does not. That sounds really, really stupid. And I'm a business major, so I can tell you that that is actually dumb, especially when your revenue is rising year over year anyway. But then you lose what, 15 billion plus dollars? Because you wanted to do something that you know the group of existing customers that you had does not like. They don't like it. They don't want it. They don't care for it. Like,
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
I don't know what to tell you, bro. At the end of the day, your pockets will tell you what people like and what people don't like. Go look at the Marvels, bro. Go look at how Deadpool 3 performed against 1, 2, and 3, to be honest, performed against the Marvels. Go look at how the original Avengers performed against friggin' actually any of the Avengers movies performed against any of these other movies, bro. They just didn't hit.
You could just argue that that's the nature of Deadpool. I think it was very like innovative at its time for its fourth wall breaking, its like anti-hero trope and things of that nature. I mean, I wouldn't I wouldn't attribute its success solely to the fact that it wasn't PC, but I know I hear you. Yeah, nah, man. Yeah, there's such thing as overdoing it. I don't think largely people are overdoing it. I think that DEI practices in hiring are still largely appropriate, and most of the pushback that you see from the customers, I mean, they're coming from like conservative customers that think that you shouldn't, these businesses shouldn't necessarily put take a strong stance in one direction versus another. And so like it's funny, a lot of the DEI initiatives that are rolling back, I hate to say it, but they look at they're occurring at conservative companies, right? Like who shops at Tractor Supply or John Deere or Ford? Like these are like the demographic that they appeal to. Yeah, there are times where it's appropriate. You got to know your demographic, who you're appealing to. Trying to make cars a gendered issue or a there may be some racial disparities in the Ford community where like that may be appropriate to address. Where like we start showing black people driving Fords because largely, I don't know, maybe we don't drive pickup trucks and they want to appeal to us. There's value in that, yes. But again, yeah, I agree that there are times where you can overstep and do too much where it is like what are you doing? When it comes to the Marvel movies though, there's a big thing in the gamer community where we started to see a lot more female protagonists and people got all up in arms about it. And I'll be honest, it largely gives like incel vibes. Like
Weebs,
it gives the fact that
the
like
Japanese wife.
you can't handle strong female roles. I don't know, it's a weird thing to fight about. But I will agree. I did have initially those feelings towards Marvel and Disney because they were they didn't do it in an appropriate way. They were very blatant, very forceful, very
Forced is.
yeah, it
Yeah.
was I would tend to agree. But overall, no, DEI is I would say DEI. And to go back because I need to address the fact that you said the pilot thing, I believe
I was gonna ask you.
Elon Musk says something to that degree, and I've seen videos where there was, I forget the HBCU, but there were women celebrating the fact that they all graduated nursing school. Um, and they said, "Do you want these women to be your future doctors?" And it was all black women. And they were getting, they was listening to some Megan Thee Stallion dancing, having a good time in their lab coats. And I strongly dislike that because One, it's a moment of celebration. Yeah, they're gonna act kooky. It doesn't
You
speak to
just go get your energy out.
it
Yeah.
doesn't speak to their efficacy as doctors, for one. For two, when it comes to the pilot thing, DEI does not lower standards. We still have the same standards, but have maybe it's not like affirmative action where they're quotas, but you do your best to hire like other perspectives where and this is especially prevalent in the business world where if you have 90% Caucasian leadership and but are trying to peel or gain a black demographic, maybe like with Ford, it would be
And go to a black person for that. Yeah, that makes
yeah,
sense.
it would make sense to hire a black person that has a unique
That's
perspective, different
qualified
from the
though.
Caucasians, and is still qualified. Yeah, but
Yeah,
like I
I
said,
agree.
DEI largely, especially when it comes to pilots, especially when it comes to medical school, like they're not lowering the bar, and to think that they're lowering the bar because you're a
Um,
minority is like kind of
They lowered the bar for
disingenuous.
firefighter standards so women could be firefighters. They lowered the bar for military standards so women could join the military. They lowered the bar for policing, even though that bar was never high. In fact, you can be
So
an officer after like 3 weeks
yeah,
to come
so
to
there
prison.
are more
But
things
they
to
lower the
do.
bar all the time,
There are
though. I don't
more
know why
things
you
to
said
do
that.
in the military, firefighting, and police officers than actually frontline combat and front of the line things where typically you would need like stereotypically male qualities such as strength. There are plenty of, I mean, going into the military, you're going to go to basic, you're going to go to officer candidate school, you're going to do these things, you're going to be doing push-ups, pull-ups, and all this other garbage initially. So why would you dismiss somebody that's qualified and capable of doing cybersecurity, of flying
Let's shoot.
unmanned drones, of doing all
Okay,
these
well that's different,
like
right? That's different. But I'm talking about the physical stuff. They lowered the
sure,
requirements
yeah,
for pilots.
and they're not lowering
Like,
like for
bro,
special
if you're
forces,
in a
they're
burning
not lowering
house, let's say
standards
your
to
house
get in.
burning right now, you suffocating, and all that pulls up is a woman that's 150
They
pounds.
work in
You think she
teams.
getting you out there? No, big fella, you're dead. You're gonna wake up in the afterlife, my boy.
Yeah,
Nah,
so I mean the fact
it's
that
real.
because like I said, they can contribute in different ways. It's not it's I think it's disingenuous to assume that like they're, they're just gonna pull up. They're gonna pull up, send in the weakest firefighter. It could be a male that's 150 pounds. He's gonna not gonna carry me out. It's gender is not the issue here. It's
That
a
boy could be
little
an Olympic level lifter. You don't know.
it sure, and he
Odds
could
are
be,
he gonna be stronger
and
than
it could
150
be. So
pound woman.
then at that point, what's the point of bringing up the fact that the woman's weak? She could have higher pound for pound strength than men. Than the male in that position. She
What
could.
are the
It's a
odds
no,
of that? What
no,
are the
but
statistical
you
odds of
want
that?
you engage in hypotheticals. I'm saying
But you left
there's a hypo.
reality though.
There are women that lift more than me. Crazy enough. That I get it.
The
They're
ones
not
that
the.
are roided up on
They're
TRT.
that's not true. There's and while it may not be the rule, there are exceptions to it. And so I don't feel like it's productive to play the what if game and say, well, what if they're weak? What if they're that? Then guess what? While she's fighting the fucking flames, send in a dude. I don't know, but there are roles that can play that you can play that shouldn't where gender should not be or your race, gender, or whatever else shouldn't be a barrier from you entering these roles, at least in my opinion. But yeah, I think largely DEI does not lower. And notice everything that you brought up was like physical. Um, I don't think there's much physicality in being a pilot or a doctor. That's largely
Well,
knowledge
here's
based
the
and
issue
things of
with the
that nature.
pilot thing. I forgot whether it's Southwest or United, but one of them literally came out and was like, "We're trying to hire specifically only black pilots." Like that crap's like, bro. If you have like a highly qualified white pilot, for example, but you only want to hire black pilots, and let's say the qualifications are the same. If the qualifications are the freaking same, they have the same experience, so on and so forth, cool. Go with the freaking black pilot. I don't care. But if the black pilot is not as qualified, like, and this
Not
is
as,
this is
but you understand,
no, hold on, really
qualified
quick.
is a threshold you meet. Just because somebody's better doesn't mean that I'm not qualified.
I got you. I get what you're saying, but at the end of the day, right? Results tell all. And I think people should be judged off their results more so than they should off their freaking skin color or their gender.
Yeah,
Like at the end of the day, right?
I would tend to agree
If
with you mostly.
yeah, like at the end of the day, right? If one pilot has 1,000 successful flights, taking off, landing, darn near no turbulence, no complaints, so on and so forth. And the other one has like 500, but they have a lot of issues, so on and so forth. And let's say I'm looking at these two, right? And the white one's the one that has 500. Cool, I'm hiring the black one because he's a better performer. I don't care about what you
I get
have
it. Yeah,
between your
yeah,
legs.
you're
I
a
don't
fan of meritocracy. I understand that. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
like, bro. And now the only issue with meritocracy is the fact that people don't necessarily have equal outcomes, right? And I understand you may not necessarily have equal outcomes, but at the same time, that's life, bro. You can't try to create quote unquote equity. Like, no, like just
Yeah,
genuinely,
yeah, we can.
genuinely.
Yeah,
Bro, there's poor white people, there's freaking poor black people.
yeah,
There's a
there
few
sure
poor
are.
Asian people. There's not a lot, but there's poor Asian people. They're just not in this country. There's poor Hispanics. At the end of the day, there are people who come from being poor, get out the mud, and make something of themselves. Just because you don't have necessarily equal outcomes doesn't mean you can't create opportunities for yourself. You can. I've seen people do it anecdotally. So
Yeah,
it's not
that's
fair. Life isn't fair. It never has been and it never will be. But trying to take away opportunities from somebody else, like for example, Harvard, bro, they denied so many Asian students that were like valedictorians in their school for minorities that weren't necessarily at that level of GPA or of
of the
education or
students. Yeah.
performance. Why did they have to lose out on that opportunity when they worked harder, they succeeded, they performed better, and they just get a big F you because you want to bring in more black students or more Hispanic students for optics? That's kind of crazy. I'm sorry,
It's
that's kind
not
of
it's
crazy.
not just optics. I mean, it largely affects your student base. If you can bring like a big thing that we get out of education and schooling, especially in the public schools, is our exposure to other students, learning from one another and learning perspectives that we can later take on to other aspects of our lives. So, I think there was a study done that like if MIT let in the highest qualified candidates, it would be 90% Asian. And there would be like zero representation of other people. And so the fact like you could have, because immigrants can go to school here, you could have an instance where a bunch of Chinese immigrants come over and they take over MIT and all of our higher education programs because they studied harder, they're smarter, they're whatever the case, they do math better. And you could have that occur. So I don't I like meritocracy is important and
Are they
recognizing what
smarter or
people
do they
can
work
do.
harder?
Uh,
There's a difference. Their parents
there
make
is a
them work
difference,
harder.
but I that was not my point. I was just rambling
Okay.
about whatever the case is.
Okay.
So, yeah, meritocracy is important. I largely agree that yeah, you should try and you should always hire qualified people. But if you have a large talent pool, then you should diversify it, and it doesn't always need to be the most like highest performer because that highest performer may have quality like though that I always heard the thing when I was in school that if you have a 4.0 GPA, companies actually look down upon you for that because it shows that you don't have extracurriculars. You're too focused. You probably lack like there's a common trope amongst engineers that the higher your GPA is, the more you lack you lack communication skills. So I mean, there are other things that they take into account there. So um,
Hey, I had a high GPA and I was the extracurriculars, but you can
yeah,
do
but
both.
nah, man, that's yeah, it serves more than just optics. It brings unique perspectives that can better the university for all students there. Um, and again, teach them about their own biases, teach the faculty how to better reach certain demographics and explain things better, a whole bunch of things.
But the
So
faculty typically has their own biases when they teach. It was like that at our school.
exactly. So guess what? When you bring in different people that
A
have
lot
a
of
unique
students don't
perspective, you
challenge
can
it though.
address that.
A
The,
lot of students, bro, bro,
sure,
bro. You could ask Kai, you could ask Solo. They'll literally be like, bro's just yapping. Like he just up there yapping. Like if somebody had like a different perspective, like as a professor, nobody really tried to challenge the professor. It was more like they just yapping. I'm trying to get my grade. I don't want him to fail me because I'm gonna verbally disagree with this man and verbally spar. Like, bruh, ain't nobody trying to do that with a professor, bro.
I mean, that may be the case in your classes, and I mean, for the most part in mine, but depending on the class that you take, like philosophy, like
Well, that's a
black,
specific
I
class
took a blacks
geared
in film
towards.
class, and a lot of these more, I don't know. I don't even know what these liberal arts majors where they encourage interaction. It's largely the case that yeah, you do have that dynamic where you can challenge ideas. But in engineering, in business, and things like that, in accounting, you don't get to necessarily argue formulas with somebody. You don't get to argue well-formed theories and all these other things. So that could be possibly the reason why you don't challenge professors as much in those classes. But it was very common that we disagreed and yelled at our professor because it was like, dude, what the hell are you talking about? So I wouldn't do.
In a philosophy class, I would sincerely hope so. Like, yeah, that's kind of the point. But
Not necessarily, because somebody could have their classroom set up where it is just a lecture, and it largely depends on that professor. So, uh, yeah, yeah, it just depends. But
it'd be a disservice to the subject.
mm, yeah, it depends. If you're just going over like philosophical theory and not necessarily like practicing it, then I could see it. Like, you don't need to challenge me on what Hume said. You just need to like write it down. But anyway, we have about 3 minutes left. I'll pass it to you for closing thoughts, final remarks, and yeah.
Guys, I think I've made it pretty clear on how I feel. I do believe that um things should predominantly be based off merit, but if merit is darn near equal, then yes, it's perfectly fine to diversify. I don't have an issue with that. But don't throw away people who worked insanely hard just because they're born with a skin color they can't control or born with a gender they can't control. That's great. That's literally discrimination. Whether people want to acknowledge it or not. But yeah, that's kind of my thoughts, guys. If you agree with things I had to say, or you agree with things X had to say, or if you agree with both of us, because I feel we found alignment on certain things, right? Then let us know in the comments who's points you're feeling a little bit more. And that being said, guys, make sure to leave a like, comment, and subscribe. We love you guys. We appreciate you for watching if you watched up to this point. And that being said, guys, stay easy, be breezy, take it easy. Salute.
Adios.